Hello, everyone, and welcome to Untier Talk, the show where just the introduction goes more and more monotone every single week as I just check further and further out of whatever the hell we're doing here. Hey, Jad, be exciting.
Hi, I'm exciting.
There we go. We did it. There's not much random stuff to talk about this week. There's more meta thoughts. I think Termy summed up most of them in council minutes pretty well. GSCPU is back, but neither of us have played it. There's going to be a rotating council, that kind of stuff. Crown Tundra info video, so we have the release date for that. But like in terms of actual, this is what's happening now. We're pretty much just going to jump right into Snake, which it was a week, all right.
Um, yeah, this week was hella like I don't know, fugazi. I think is the perfect word to describe this.
Um, let's put it this way. I'm glad that OU is just kind of awful right now because PU really doesn't look that bad. I mean,
Yeah,
it does to the
I
people
think
who still play OU, but oh my god, OU is so bad. And I'm not trying. I'm not like hating on the tier if you play it. Obviously, still the highest level of competition, all that. But god, that tier fucking sucks, dude.
yeah, I think the thing that's saving PU a lot at the moment is that all the other tiers look pretty shit as well. So it's like we're
No
not the
one's
only
in a
one here.
good spot. I think that's good
Yeah,
perspective to keep. And we did have some good stuff this week. We just also had some pretty bad stuff. Let's start with a
yeah.
game that's less on the terrible side. False versus TJ. Um,
Wait, this is less on the terrible side. Are you?
comparatively,
Oh,
compared to
oh
the
my
other
god,
games.
nice. Well, actually, I should also preface this that um, when False was building, he came to me in PMs, I think, and was like, "Yo, what do you think of this team?" And I just saw a Grookey and a Grassy Seed Machana, and I'm like, "Yes, this is gonna win 100%." Um,
No.
and then I
No.
told him just those two Pokemon. Like he just needs to build around Grookey and Mashana, right? And then just make a solid team, like a more solid team than what he already had. I specifically pointed out Heatmore, and I said, "You kind of lose to this. Make sure you're better versus this when you actually play TJ." And he was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And then game actually happens, and I see Heatmore, and I
Uh,
was like,
I mean,
"Fuck."
okay, so we'll get to the Heatmore thing because it's not normal Heatmore. I at least get that. But yeah, I've said this many times since PUPL. I do not rate terrain. It's not that Grookey is bad. It's not even that the seed stuff is that bad. It's that it is a matchup based playstyle that doesn't match up teams enough to be worthwhile. It will run into like average ass teams that aren't exceptionally prepared for terrain, and that's where your matchup based team should be like, you're not so good
His
versus
team.
Rain, get bopped. We've seen that in
Mm,
like earlier slam games or whatever, where we had like Rain Dreadnought, and the only reason it didn't win was because it missed Megahorns or whatever. But
mhm.
terrain here consistently does not just win matchups versus average stuff. I will say False
I
got a
think
below average matchup, but that's another problem with terrain. You also sometimes run into shit that's even more problematic. I don't rate it. I really don't.
honestly, honestly, if you want my honest opinion with regards to this, I think Foles had a 95% shot. After he showed me that screenshot, he had a 95% shot of winning this week. He just ran into the 5% of teams that can actually like beat.
I
Like think
don't think
about
it's
his
5%
Mashanic.
of teams. I really don't.
I do. I genuinely think it's five. Like I looked, like I've had like I don't know how to say like a loose eye, like a sort of a wandering eye where I was looking towards. Okay, what do we actually have in the tier to beat Grassy Seed Mashana? Because you have the stored power, you have the calm mind, you have the Grassy Seed +1 defense, and you have rest, right? And the coverage to hit darks. You have that all in one thing. What teams can actually deal with that? And the one thing that comes to mind is like Pawniard, and another thing is like taunt stuff, and other stuff is like Dusknoir, I guess. And TJ had three of them out of like
Well, there's also
three possible
Dusknoir
things.
doesn't really beat it depending on the set. Actually, Dusknoir can definitely lose, but there's also
Yeah, of course.
random trick users can be annoying. Um, there's a tiny bit of encore. That's not as much of a thing. I think trick is the next big thing. If Mishran is heal bell
Yeah,
and
I think
not if Mishran is heal bell and not rest, then some really fat toxic users.
Think about as
Um,
well, like how many trick users do we even have? Like the best trick
Trick is
user, like
shockingly
quotation marks.
common. I swear to God, Trick is not
Really?
uncommon enough to just really.
I have not seen a good like
Between the
what trick
Gorgeists,
users.
I've seen the Gorgeists. Sometimes the Lipard will run Trick. There's the Dusknoir with Switcheroo. That's the kind that beats the
That's yeah, that would
Masharna.
be the kind that beats
There's
Rishi. Yeah.
there's some if you want to get really crazy, this Flame Orb Drifloon that was like a big Discord night discussion topic, but that's not
Oh yeah,
actually
I saw
super common.
that. I was
But
part of
yeah,
that discussion actually.
mostly between like the Gorgeist and the Dusknoir, I do see a pretty reasonable amount of trick. It's not that crazy.
Yeah, I think generally if you're using Gorgeist and Dusknoir, you don't want to be using to take on Rashad. Like just speaking extremely generally,
No, but
you
like
don't
you
want to be
have
taking.
okay. I don't think it always auto wins that much. And those are just like the generic things that beat it, not when you get specific, like, oh, Poniard is a problem, or Lipard can't kill it on its own, but it should be in range of something else, whatever. Point
Right.
is,
Yeah,
False
but
brings terrain, and TJ brings a very slow spikes team. This one's pretty interesting. It's Dusk Noir spikes. It's like spikes plus I got that spin blocker, which I get. I'm generally in favor of. Plus a Poniard, which you normally don't see on these kind of teams, at least like from what I've seen most of the time. Because
mm,
Poniard like doesn't you kind of want another rocker after Poniard, and then at that point your team is just very slow. And TJ basically just embraced that and has like five very slow Mons and an Unpheasant, which I don't. Was it Scarf? It was probably Scarf. I don't remember if it actually revealed that.
yeah,
Um,
I don't remember either.
you would
I would
assume.
have a wager that it's Scarf. Yeah.
Yeah, but like it's very because it's very slow, but it's still a pretty offensive spikes team. The other thing about this kind of like Dustmore spikes and that kind of stuff is it's normally your Roselia or your Sand Slash. Because if you're going slower and fatter, you might as well have more defensive presence. But he goes with the eject pack Maractus, which hell yeah, I love Maractus. Um, but it's a very
I
different
just want to have
kind of
a
team. It's very, like I said, very slow, interesting. I think it overall
yeah.
kind of works.
I'll be entirely honest with you. I was extremely impressed with TJ's team. Like, given how like his previous teams have looked, and looking at this team, this is a team that's markedly like higher than what he's currently been bringing, and I feel like that saved him this week. Because if he had anything slightly worse than this, he would have lost 100%.
For sure, yeah.
But
I think that's a
he
big
brought a good
thing.
team.
That it's a huge improvement. I think it has like every team's gonna have some weaknesses. The only reason I'm slightly more iffy on it is because Alolan Dugtrio has been like a rising threat in the past couple weeks that I think everyone has to be taking into account now, even though it's on the weirder end of threats, just because like
Mm.
it has been so, at least to my eyes, so common and so good every time it pops up. And that is like the biggest thing that TJ's team kind of goes, I just won't handle that as much, which is a weird choice to me. Otherwise, yeah, I think this is like pretty good, pretty different kind of team, and clearly worked out very well in this matchup, looking for False to do the kind of
Yeah,
fishing thing that he did.
I personally have a massive soft spot for like spikes balances with priority spam. Like I feel like that's just such a super like a cool, skillful way of approaching the metagame. Where you're like, yeah, this is how I'm going to do things, and if you bring something faster, I'm going to put you in range of priority and beat you that way. So yeah, I genuinely think TJ should be applauded for this team. It's really good.
Mm-hmm. um,
I'd actually consider it for a sample, to be honest.
I mean,
Like this is
there's a
probably
there's a
as
tier
good as
shift
team you're going to
tomorrow.
get.
Literally, we're recording
I
this
mean,
the day
yeah.
before the tier shift. I will say,
I mean, yeah, but if we were looking for samples,
yeah,
obviously, but yeah.
I will say one early gameplay that surprised me is when he used Poniard to beat the Drifloon, which it did do. Like it does do that, it does. Instead of the Stunfisk though, um,
Yeah, that could have got Heron.
Stunfisk didn't
That's when it could have
need
got
to be
Heron.
saved because he would have had a full health Poniard. Like Unpheasant wasn't scary, and you would think that Poniard is the thing to stop Masharna. So at that point, it actually looked kind of scary. It was like presumably Masharna wins unless the Dusk Noir is like Power Punch and Darkest Lariat or something. But pretty soon he reveals it's actually an offensive special taunt Heatmore. I liked this a lot. Initially, I'd seen the speed on his team. I thought it might have even been Scarf Heatmore and just non-scarf on pheasant. I'm pretty sure in hindsight, like Unpheasant didn't reveal. I'm pretty sure it's just scarf on pheasant. But I think Tahimor is a really cool balance breaker. I think it, clearly messes with Fat Defog for your spikes team. I like this, and it does a lot of work here. And basically, False doesn't have that much else to do, particularly since TJ doesn't have to worry about Quiver Dance Lilligant because it ended up being Choice Specs Leaf Storm to just use the grassy terrain.
Mm-hmm.
And that pretty much
Yeah,
made it
I
like
think.
a pretty free win for TJ.
Yeah, I think TJ built a lot of good redundancy in his team, where things that he has loads of things which half check a lot of things. So, like for example, Lilligan, if it ended up being Quiver Dance, like he had I'm assuming Scarf and Pheasant in the back, but there's also a Heatmore and there's also an AV. I assume AV Dustnor as
Mm-hmm.
well. Or
Even
yeah, it's AV
Ponyard,
Dustnor.
even Ponyard takes a
Yeah,
hit. So like once you sleep fodder
so
something,
so much redundancy, and it's like when you're false and you're thinking, okay, well, uh, Mashana wins sort of if I beat the Pawniard and the Dustnor, and then he didn't even know about the Heatmore. Lilligant wins if I have to kill three other things. Uh, Driftblim wins if I have to kill three things. Like there's so many things that False has to get damage on before he can be truly scary, if that makes sense.
yeah,
Which is a feature of terrain teams, but yeah, it's generally like well built by TJ. That's what saved him, to be honest.
yeah. This was a good step up, and I think puts him to 2-2 now. The next one is going to
Decent.
be Ziri versus Vulpix 03. Vulpix is playing in over Rosie for the first time, and Ziri is on this 3-0 high. So naturally, what you see is a team that I just don't like from Ziri. I like what it's trying to go for. It's more spikes plus Dustmar. It's pretty offensive, and it's got a Phalanx, which we haven't seen in a while, and is a seriously good mon right now. I get it. I like what it's trying to do, but it's one of those teams that I think looks a lot better on paper and does not come together. If you cannot like immediately get that pressure worked up on the opponent's team and be like constantly threatening to do 80% to all the switch-ins, this team is going to die out fast. And pretty much all this game was Vulpix not doing anything crazy, not hitting any like really smart buttons or anything, but just waiting for Ziri's team to die against Vulpix because it just did not fit together.
Yeah, I think you're right in the fact that this team looks way better on paper. The key thing for me is that it's not got any of that top speed stuff and a lot of things which invite a lot of offensive pressure. So, for example, Dustnor will invite a lot of physical attackers in, and but particularly Lurantis, it's quite slow. So anything with above 150-ish speed is going to be like, okay, I have a breaking opportunity on this thing, and probably it. And freaking Manectric, because Manectric is weak
Yeah,
as shit. But
yeah. The only fast mon really is Manectric. Phalanx might have been first impression. The
it was, yeah.
rhyme, oh yeah, it was. The rhyme is bulky-ish with rapid spin. That's a hard to pressure. Um,
Adding to it as
especially
well,
especially when like your
adding to
Dustnor with the priority that might revenge kill is pretty much just sacking itself to stop a spin immediately.
yeah, add into that as well that he has Ziri's team has a lot of not as much immediate pressure overall in comparison to like most other teams in this metagame. Like none of his mons are particularly strong, and that's a tough thing to build
It's
into
setup
or
pressure.
not build into your team. Yeah, it's like you have loads of setup things. Like Kepi had a problem with this a couple of weeks ago, I think, where we had a lot of anti-offense fast things, not fast things like anti-offense like counterplay setup ones, but it when you have loads of Pokemon that take a turn to get going, there's nothing for you to instantly pressure like a reasonably like defensive backbone, something like Null plus Tangela, which Vulpix ended up bringing.
Yeah, yeah. And add on to that, I don't even think the biggest like gotcha play of this game or whatever was Vulpix like doing anything crazy to mess Siri up. It was Vulpix has a Specs Behemoth that has just killed your Mr. Rhyme, and Ziri goes hard Lurantis and superpowers it, and is also slower. and like does no damage and is easily 2 KO, takes 73. And that's just killer. If anything is going to win this game for you, it's going to be Lurantis getting a couple defensive boosts and not getting crit by Unpheasant, and Tangle is not Sludge Bomb, and Savali Ice can't do enough, and whatever else you need, right? Lurantis kind of has to be that.
Yeah.
Because presumably at this point it's Scarf on Pheasant, which is going to be shutting down your potential no retreat phalanx. So like it's got to be Lurantis, and that doesn't work. But like you've also then got to sack another Pokemon to Behem before you can revenge it with the first impression failing. Yeah, and at that point the game is just pretty much done. I don't know that Ziri would have been able to win anyway. Oh, look, it was actually Silvally Rock. So yeah, Lurantis was definitely the win con. Pretty scary for Vulpix.
Also
That
consider
really.
that Behem doesn't get Signal Beam this gen, so it doesn't have something super effective to hit Lurantis and is faster on that
Well,
special side.
Specs, yeah. Well, no, it is the BEM was faster, so Specs Psychic was going to be a problem,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
and yeah, and Tangela with Sludge
Oh, Spec
Bomb.
Psychic, yeah.
Tangela with Sludge Bomb though, um, isn't necessarily going to be beating you either way. Like, yeah, this just didn't come together, which I think is a real shame because it's a fun team, but it's on the more experimental side, and that just doesn't make sense to me going up against this team against Vulpix, who has not played BU. Um, Sort of just losing at him. I don't think Vulpix did anything wrong or bad. I think their team is pretty much fine. I don't have any big issues with it. Um,
Hmm.
but Vulpix didn't do anything. Zeri just lost at them, and that's never how you want to be starting out as like this 3-0 top of the pack player.
Yeah, I actually really like Vulpix's team. Like if you were to sum up balance in this meta, it would kind of look like this, where you have like a Tangela for the Spizz Def stuff, the Null for the Spizz Def stuff, a
Yeah,
big breaker, and a fast thing, and then that's it.
yeah.
I mean, that's
BM
pretty much
plus
how it
Rock
goes.
Volley is just such a weird core to me because I tend to feel right now that Specs BM is sometimes insane and sometimes useless doing zero, and Rock Volley is
It
kind of the same. So between
yeah,
them, that just feels like a very weird offensive core.
it really depends. Like Behem works extremely well if you need to keep one of your main core defensive mons, and I can always force it out with Behem. So, for example, versus Stunfisk teams, which I feel
Right.
like this is well built into the Vulpix's team. Like if he goes into Vali, he clicks Parting Shot on the Stunfisk, comes into Behem, you have to keep Stunfisk. There's no way you can stay in. So
Right, and that's
you're
something
getting
I
the
have
analytics.
tried, like offensive BM plus rock volley, and I find sometimes, especially if they've got any kind of hazard up, and if they have any kind of redundancy, and BM can only click like psychic or T bolt, it can be hard. I feel like this team just, um, it's weird to me. It's something that I don't have problems with because I think it works, but I wouldn't. I think if Ziri was just like on top of their game, bringing the same like normal stuff and not making like the weird Lurantis sack there, I think it could have gone significantly
Yeah,
better
I
for them. Simply because this is the kind of thing that you have a lot of room to outplay and just shut it down. Just shut it down.
yeah
That's more.
yeah I
That's
think
more what I mean.
yeah. Generally speaking, I think Vulpix performed towards the top of their like threshold, and Zeri performed towards the bottom, which is again why we predict like 80-20. I think last week we said something like that. Like Vulpix definitely got in
You do.
that
I don't. I
20
don't
there,
do
like
numbers.
where he got like he played super well, had a decent enough team, and then Zeri didn't play that great
I don't
and
even
didn't
think
have
he
a super
played
great team
super
either.
well. This is about what I expect from Vulpix, who's a competent player in general.
Mm.
This again. I just think the Ziri kind of lost at them, which happens. It happens a lot. And speaking of lost at them, let's talk about Kepi versus Obi.
Wait, why are you doing this to my boy, man?
Look, I went back to PUPL to look at Kepi's games after this because this was another game where Kepi just really struggled, and I wanted to see like, did we all just suck versus Kepi, or are they like doing way worse than they were in PUPL? And I don't know. This is a weird case because looking back at Kepi's PUPL wins, they're pretty much all from people just throwing the game at him. Like me versus
Mm.
Kepi, great example. It's like 20 turns, and I've already managed to throw like every check I have to Kadabra and just lose. Horrible game. I played like a complete blithering idiot. Um, and what we're
That's a
starting to
very
see now,
is my English rubbing off on you? Jesus, blithering idiot is a very
I no, I wanted to throw in some.
UK.
I wanted to throw in some Brit slang for you. I do that
Let's
sometimes.
go.
I've done that sometimes in Untier talk. Just anyway,
Let's go. The
point
influence is
is,
strong.
I look back and a lot of the games are like that, and I don't feel like Kepi's figured out how to force wins because I think Obi's team is cool, but I don't think it really works. Kepi has a lot of opportunities, and this game was basically one big long throw. Kepi, like we talked about in the PU Discord right after the game, even Obi was there commenting on it. This was just 100% should have been a Kepi win, and I don't think it's their team. I think their team is perfectly fine. It's nothing off standard. It's a pretty basic looking offense. Uh, this was just a big throw.
Um, Honestly, I think Kepi did underperform in terms of like the plays in the game. We were focusing heavily this week on making sure that they didn't have a poor matchup, a piss poor matchup, because we really wanted to challenge Obi in that sense. Like, if we get like a slightly in our favor matchup, like a 60-40, 70-30 matchup, we can cause Obi some problems. Um, but yeah, what ended up happening is like I'm guessing Kepi got a bit nervous in the game, and that ended up costing them because when you when you're so focused on making certain plays or like really hyper focusing on a win condition, you can often just like lose sight of what the opponent is actually doing to you. And I feel like that might have been what happened to Kepi, where it's just like I have to get this thing to win on my team, but um, they weren't focusing too much on the I don't know the immediate or what Obi was like secretly plotting in the back, which is unfortunate. I actually really like Obi's team. I think it was Avarice. Was it Avarice?
I don't remember.
I, Somebody PM'd me afterwards, and they were Dylan on Discord. It was Dylan.
Yeah, Dylan's avarice. I don't know what
Yeah,
who you're talking
yeah.
about.
Avarice built for Obi then. But
Yeah, avarice did
yeah,
build
I
for
actually
Obi.
really
Build this
yeah.
one
So
anyway.
it's like semi room, and I particularly like the idea of semi room in current PU because you have the natural wall breaking ability of a Marowak and a Lurantis and a Behemoth, but you can also have that anti offense
Yeah,
aspect to Trick Room where you're just like faster than everything and dealing so much damage.
and
So
like I said
I
at the time, I just don't think the anti-offense is enough here. I'd be very
mm,
concerned about this team as soon as Trick Room runs out, or if it's messed up in any way. Something like Lipard is just going to start spamming knockoff, and
yeah, exactly.
that's pretty scary. So I don't think entirely comes together, but I think that's sort of a problem where Semi Room and Trick Room in general just not a great play style. And I think for Trick Room, I don't even know that I could do anything better with it. So
Hmm. Yeah, this is
even
as
if
good
it's
as you're
not
gonna get with
perfect, I
Trick
think
Room.
it's at the top of that field. If you're like, I want to do Trick Room, and I think there's definitely a lot to like. But what won it here still wasn't even Trick Room. Um, and that's problematic. Turn one, I think immediately Cappy is willing to sack Dreadnought just for a head smash on Obi's BM. I mean, Dreadnought's not the most useful here, I guess, but I don't know why.
Hmm.
I guess they really wanted to preserve Mawile for the Glaceon and were just willing to trade the damage. Just seemed like a weird start to me. I don't know. But immediately we get into the bigger stuff. So
I
Cappy,
genuinely don't think the head smasher is that bad of a play, but turn three was a bit worse than that.
it's not that bad yet. So turn three, Cappy is Silvally Ice against Type Null. Swords Dances on the switch in. And then from here, opts not to Swords Dance again and just take multi-attack damage. Then Obi goes on Pheasant and Kepi opts to Flame Charge on it instead of just outright killing it. If Kepi outright killed it, he won the game. And presumably the only reason he didn't is because he thought Obi was going to be Scarf on Pheasant. You turn out, sack something, and then come back in and kill him with Brave Bird.
Mm, yeah, this is the type of thing where you're so focused on like your own thing winning that you just have no idea what OB is planning in the back. Um, like if I'm pretty sure if, as I said, you didn't even need to swords dance the second time. You could have just clicked multi attack. You really didn't need the second swords dance. Um, but you know the key kill was on Unpheasant. You had to kill it. So you might as well go for broke because if he brave birds and you don't kill it, then you're in a tight spot. Like you can still win, but it's a tight spot because Unpheasant is really scary to Kepi's team, especially considering you sack Type Null, the Dreadnought turn one.
Mm-hmm. But like, you just want to kill it, and let's say it does. Like, let's say it does. It is Scarf. So let's say it does U-turn out as you kill something with multi attack. You know, you've still got after that. You've still got a Silvally at like 70% that Obi can't really safely switch into, and he's got a Marowak and a Lurantis, and potentially even the Glaceon if it's weakened enough, or the Behem if it never recovers, that you can revenge kill. This is still a really useful Mon. So like beyond all that, just not killing the Unpheasant, which, like we said, immediately won the game, real problem.
Yeah, 100.
Silvally still does work.
That was the main misplay for me, to be honest.
Yeah, Silvally still does
work. The
work.
rest of the game is just
it kills the Behem. It gets a lot of chip on Glaceon, but that's huge. That is like such a big, like very basic flaw. And then I think to make things worse, I don't like how he immediately tries to set rocks with Mawile.
Oh yeah, no, that was a misplay. That was a misplay, but I feel like it's all stemming off of that. Like, instant.
You're now trying to limit this Unpheasant that you've left alive. No, you need Mawile healthy. Like you simply cannot let it take 2 ice beams like this. At that point, Scarf Unpheasant, like it just doesn't work as a play. You can't do it. Then Obi gets in his Lurantis. Kepi goes Driftblim. Misses Will-O-Wisp twice, which is hugely unfortunate. Like, would have been a much better place, but still. This Driftblim 1v1s Obi's Lurantis, and the entire rest of his team, except Type Null, which can PP stall it out. It's not Toxic Type Null, it's not Toxic Scarf Unpheasant. Driftblim, like, beats all this stuff. And it beats Lurantis because you can keep spamming Strength Sap on Contrary Lurantis until it runs out of Leaf Storm. And +6 Leaf Storm doesn't do enough. And I don't think Kepi realized that and just sacked Driftblim without trying to Strength Sap it.
Yeah, I think,
and that like Drift, that was another win con just tossed away. And at that point, the rest of the game doesn't really matter. It's just like a basic OB cleaning up the pieces.
Yeah, you basically described it perfectly there. Like, there's not much OB needed to do really. It was just sort of Kepi clicking buttons and then not killing enough things.
Yeah. It's an unfortunate game, but like it's really just those sets of critical misplays that are understandable, but you just can't make in a place like this because Obi will just capitalize on that and go on to be 4-0.
Obi's a really good player, to be fair. Like, I think if any player was going to,
Obi's good, but those were not forced misplays. Those were not being put in a tough. I mean, playing the game is being put in a tough spot. That was like turn 3. Obi hasn't even done anything yet, and you're messing up with the Silvally Ice. I'm not saying Obi's bad. I'm just saying that's not down to like Obi's a great player. That's just.
Yeah, but I think one of the key things is that he needed to have the teams to give him a shot, just so he can flex that muscle a little bit. And I think Avarice has done generally a really good job, apart from the one fighting resist team. About like giving him a decent team. So yeah, Props to him.
Yeah, and we'll move on to kind of a similar situation for my player now, Soulgazer, in Soulgazer versus Ham.
I saw this game as well.
You didn't see this game?
No, I think I did.
I mean, I would hope you've seen all of them, but okay. Yeah, I helped with Soulgazer's team, but I've been incredibly busy, basically just not playing this game until the tier shifts. Not useful. I like Soulgazer's team. I think it's fine. I just don't think it's
I
that
think
crazy. And like I'll
uh,
talk about this more when we get into the game. I think in this meta you need a little bit of you either need to be like so bog standard strong that is just like good, which I don't think is even that strong, or you need something that's like crazy good. And I think Soge's team is perfectly workable and just a bit vanilla in hindsight. Like at the time, I was like, yeah, this is going to be good, but eh.
yeah, I generally think this team struggles versus the Waters, like Golduck and Ludi, that those type of things. But I guess they're a bit off standard, so I can understand why SG decided to bring it. Um, that being said, uh, there are. I feel like Ham brought a properly standard team, like one that's not going to die easily, and the amount of things Solgazer has which are don't put on the immediate pressure, like Silvally pre SD is
Yeah, a lot of this team
his
is
most
about getting
powerful
up
thing.
spikes,
Yeah,
and without that,
and
it
when you're
doesn't have that
when
that immediate pressure. So we definitely knew about that.
exactly exactly, and when you have spikes as your scarfer as well, it's like you're choosing sometimes between spikes and scarf. Like which one do you prefer? And that's fine depending on the matchup. That's like a perfectly useful thing. Um, but you know, not when you're dependent that much on spikes. Like you use all your speed control at that point. So yeah, you need to back spikes up there with a little bit of breaking power. And I feel like one of Silvally and Pheasant or Phalanx needed to go for something which was much more powerful.
Yeah, I really didn't hate the breaking power because Gorg is that thing that will mess up the weirder teams. And then in terms of more standard teams, I do think Savali Rock Phalanx as a core generally covers it. What we mostly get down to here is that Ham just has some spice from ZS. Like just the weirder stuff that you don't really have room to play around in this meta because the like teams are still like a lot there's more space to play around things without like the dumb broken things we banned. But teams and games are still kind of strict in my opinion. And you bring something like the specific Lurantis and Gorgeist that we end up facing, and that is pretty much what just ends this game. Rather than a lot of like matchup stuff on its own, I feel like if Soulgazer went into this game knowing every spread and every set, he wins or at least does much better. But that kind of stuff is very hard to deal with um, when you're just running into it for the first time in a random tour game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think ZS did a really good job hooking up Ham here as well because I personally really like Ham's team. I think that's a something that we can say quite comprehensively since Booth and Klinklang got banned. The building quality in terms of like what teams are trying to achieve and their overall weaknesses has drastically gone up. Like,
Absolutely.
I think based on this week, we've seen so many more good teams, which I'm so thankful for.
Yeah.
But
My one gripe
like,
is I still don't get why this team is so Lipard weak. It feels like it doesn't have to be.
I feel like he's gone down the meta check route. Like he's gone Fizz Def. If it's like a CB Lipard, he has Stunfisk, and if it's special, he has Type Null, and then just like yeah, whatever. If it
Yeah,
beats
but
me, it beats me at
Stunfisk
that point.
isn't the CV Lipard check. That's why I'm like, it gets a little bit meta checky to where Lipard specifically. I think the two like not the two, the three mons that I'd be like, if you're going meta checky, you should still beat these three things because they were so common and so strong the last couple weeks of this and also in Slam. You should be able to not lose to Lipard. You should be able to not lose to Lowland Dugtrio, and you should be able to not lose to Throw. I think most teams have done a lot better about Throw, um, but I don't get running a Lowland Dugtrio and Lipard weak stuff to this extent. Where if I was facing this and I had a CB Lipard, I'd be pretty gosh darn happy. That's my only. That's my only gripe, which I wanted to bring up, not because I think Ham's team is bad, just because that's like a good excuse to talk about how I feel about the meta. That's all.
Yeah,
Um,
I think teams have really focused well on beating Lilligan. Not to say that Lilligan is bad,
mm,
but Lilligan would not have done well this week. But I still think it's a broken threat. I still
no,
think
Lilligan's
the amount of
crazy,
focus,
and there's
the
so
amount of
much
focus
focus.
teams have exactly. Yeah, there's so much like so many things people have to think about when taking on Lilligan. It's like just because if you look at the teams now, they look fine versus Lilligan. Doesn't mean that it's not providing nightmares for people in the builder, and that's something I don't think people get around.
It is. I think you can clearly see where like we saw multiple Scarf and Pheasants and like a lot. There was a lot of Lilligan prep this week, but at the same time, like Soulgazer went, we're not bringing Lilligan. People are gonna be too prep for it. That's absolutely what happened across the board. We only saw one Lilligan, which was choice specs on grassy terrain, which is a whole different deal. Because everyone knew almost every team was going to be pretty prepped for it. Anyway,
Yeah.
This game is pretty much dominated by surprise sets. Turn one, we're Scarf Sandslash, which is a pretty fun set that you put me onto in the first place, and it just Oko's Ham's specs Mr. Mime. You'd think that's pretty good for Soulgazer, but pretty soon things are going to go not so good. I think the real misplay, like if Soulgazer had known all the sets and stuff, the real thing that he would have done is just not use Gourgeist small the way that he does in this game. Because very early we're going to get to like Soulgazer playing what he's done in the past few weeks, very, very passively, very reactively. Switching around, Ham is going to like get the Gourgeist toxic, switching to rocks multiple times, really getting it chipped very fast. And in hindsight, knowing the specific Lurantis set here and exactly what's going on, you would not want that. You would want this Gourgeist to stay healthy and be able to like do a little bit of that Lurantis checking action. But Soulgazer basically does that because he thinks he's still fine versus it. And that's a huge deal here. But also, like he's still getting some progress. He toxic the Stunfisk, he gets the Phalanx in, and this is the second place where surprise sets really just do the do. Because Soulgazer sets up with no retreat extremely early. Thinking this is a great chance to do like some breaking and really mess Ham up, and maybe the Gourgeist will have to trick or something. Otherwise, my Phalanx is a great spot. And then it turned out to be weakness policy, presumably flame charge, but he didn't hit it. I don't know why. That would have 6-0'd, but whatever. Gourgeist small. And that's the kind of thing, like, you just lost Phalanx in a way you really, really didn't want to. If that Gourgeist switched into rocks, like, twice, it would have died to the throat chop. That just blows. Like, how do you prep for that?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's not much you can do. Like, I think at some point you have to say, like, somebody just I don't want to say outbuilt, but outbuilt to some extent, like how you played it. When every single tech that you've used comes off, it's like, well, what can you do? Like, every single meme quotation marks that somebody decides to doing business, like, it's just kind of unfortunate, to be honest. Like, you kind of feel sorry at that sense. Like,
yeah, like Phalanx looked like an amazing win con this game, and then it turns out that like Ham's team is quote unquote weak to fighting types, Throw and Phalanx, and Hitmonchan, all problems. Hitmonchan really a problem, but like Throw and Phalanx, you just catch them off with the weakness policy like this. You're gonna do so much damage in return because this set is really annoying and scary and problematic. And then at that point, presumably you can just win the game from there, regardless of like the potential fighting type weakness, because you've done so much damage. And this just really hurts. Phalanx was definitely the win con here. What you've got left is the Gourgeist that's almost dead, and the Silvally Rock and Unpheasant that have to wear down the Stunfisk together, and that's dangerous because you've got para risks. But this is still a doable game. And then after that, things go immediately downhill because Soulgazer sends in the Scarf Sandslash to revenge kill the Gourgeist. Hits Earthquake instead of Knockoff, I guess predicting a Stunfisk switch in. Otherwise, that makes no sense to me because he doesn't knock off the Lurantis, which is just critical. Really needed to happen because after that doesn't happen, this Lurantis will basically in a couple turns just absolutely go to town. Mostly because Soulgazer tries to switch in Mawile instead of going hard on Pheasant, assuming that the Mawile with speed creep, well, that must outspeed Lurantis. No, even with speed creep, this Mawile is too slow. This Lurantis had to be like well over 100 speed EVs, possibly over 200. I don't remember how much the Mawile is crapped, and that just decides the game. Like just another surprise set. If Soulgazer had gone hard on Pheasant, he would have been fine. you still got 50-50s on whether you want to hit a move and Stun Fist comes in or Roost and its superpowers, whatever. But as soon as you go Mawile, that's game. Because this Lurantis just happened to be NASCAR Lurantis instead of. Well, no, it was. Apparently, they said afterwards it was impish, but also incredibly fast. And that's the thing where, like, you've already. Soul Gazer had even seen the Sand Slash Earthquake roll and been like, that's an impish Lurantis. And then it turns out it's also incredibly fast. Like, you got outbuilt.
Yeah,
you got
that's true.
sauced. That's. Is
Yeah,
this is
good for him then.
it's pretty much equivalent to when you're not prepped for it and you get trick roomed or rained or something. Just not with that kind of gimmicky playstyle, just with these like weird mons or different sets on these mons that like there's only so much you can play around prepping for that kind of stuff. It's just you come up with like the wacky and it does the job.
Yeah, it's part of the meta, to be honest. Yeah, like there's not hardly anything you can do about these types of things because the meta hasn't been discovered enough.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
like when I put Soul Gazer rank 1, I really underestimate how much like having a fairly solved quote unquote solved meta like SMPU um, just boosts Soul Gazer drastically. When he's just outplaying everyone and knowing like what everything is going to pop out and has these just like basic standard teams to pilot over you. It's so different than running into something like this and just getting screwed off that.
yeah. I feel like
That's one
SG
three Soul Gazer now.
yeah, me and SG we have that same sort of thing where it's like if the meta is generally speaking solid and balance versus balance is the main like matchup that happens, then usually we can maneuver our ways to put ourselves in good positions. More often than not, especially in Soul Gazer then, because he's been doing it everywhere, not just in PU. But like when you have a meta which is just messy, right? You can't exert that level of control that you might have been able to do in a more solid meta, which like you have to adapt, you have to change things, but it's unfortunate as well.
Yeah, and I think what we've seen from Soul Gazer's reaction to that is every game has been very passive play.
Yeah, it's
Very
hard not
safe.
to be like it's hard to be solid in a not solid meta. It's just
Yeah.
you at some point you just have to let it go and just be like, yep, I'm in the source now. I'm in the chaos. Let's do it.
Yeah,
But
and it
yeah,
doesn't
we'll see what
help.
happens next week, I guess.
It doesn't help that his building support has not been on the level of what other people are getting because I'm
Yeah,
not. I just have not. I in hindsight now, I'm very glad that I did not try to get drafted for Snake because I just would not have had the time, and I would have just, I would have totally let a team down. Um, but that's not important. Speaking of actually being solid in a meta like this, Katat versus tlenit. Tlenit has been struggling quite a bit and basically fell back on the same kind of very standard offense we saw earlier with the Rhyme and the Apple and the Mawile and the Blimp, and then the last two mons are an Unfezant and Manectric. Sure, basic. Manectric's kind of weird, I guess, but whatever. Um, fine. It's fine. No Lipards this
yeah,
week. I think no Lipards at all, which is just crazy considering how much work it was doing last week and everything. Holy shit. Uh,
yeah. It's just it's hard when you have. I feel like in this meta, it's just sort of like people in the last meta were just like, fuck it, I'm just being weak to everything. I'll just throw Lipod on, right? But this meta, it feels like you have a chance at being solid. So
mhm.
anything without much defensive utility, you're just kind of say, well, this is kind of limiting my team from being truly solid. Therefore, I'm not going to use it. And I feel like that's what Lipod and Litigan usage definitely suffered from.
Yeah, but on the other hand, we've seen two Manectrics, which is just a god awful mon, so maybe there's no real rhyme or reason.
Yeah, but the thing is, like Manectric offers speed control and like a Volt immunity, so
Like
that
freaking
factors in a
speed
little bit more.
control?
It's like,
I know. I'm just making fun of
yeah,
Manectric. Gatut
I mean,
has a pretty fat kind of balance team. Not as fat as it initially looks. Some of the sets are actually more offensive. Um, that yeah, mostly covers its bases. I wouldn't have said at team preview that this is like anything that crazy, especially from someone like Gatut, who in the past has mostly just been like going so crazy, and that's how he's been grabbing his wins. This is just kind of feels much more along the lines of I'll just be better than my opponent kind of team.
Yeah, 100%. I do think Katut's team is built well for a balanced team. Um, he has a lot of the things that you need and covers a lot of the meta game with it. So I'm pretty happy with Katut's team. I think it's really good. Um, as far as tlenit's team, I think it's also like fine. Like, I don't see any problems with it. Like I think the biggest problem with tlenit's team is just a lack of cohesion offensively. I feel like
Yeah,
that's the thing that lets it down.
this is how I feel about very standard when you're just like I'm gonna run standard good stuffs. I don't feel like standard good stuffs comes together to be all that threatening. Uh, and the way tlenit tries to get around that is Shadow Ball Mr. Rhyme as like the all-in-one breaker that I just keep pivoting into Mr. Rhyme, and that's the thing that does the job instead of it working together offensively more. Is how I interpret this team anyway, which can work. Unfortunately, Katata's Spadef Mr. Rhyme that isn't 2KO by Shadow Ball. That sucks. But yeah,
I
that's
thought it would do it KO to be fair, but yeah, that's a surprising count to me actually because Shadow Ball, especially from Specs Mr. Rhyme, like you'd expect
I'm
that to do
pretty
it
sure.
KO, right?
Hang on, Rhyme, Pew Spadef, Rhyme, Pew Choice. I'm pretty sure Specs would 2KO. It would do 54. That's Spadef. Nope, that's not
Yeah,
Specs. I totally lie. It's just offensive Shadow Ball, hoping to not run into Spadef Mr. Rhyme. It's not Specs.
yeah, then,
My bad.
yeah, yeah. Then you definitely have some passive issues on that team.
Yeah, like and
Like
it does like it abuses the unpheasant stops and whatever, but I don't. Yeah, I said this to Flaming Victini when he was like, we should just bring standard good stuffs. I don't think that's really a thing right now because you end up with this. Um, and what happens very early, especially due to the immediate discharge pair on the Drift Blim, is that Katut is already getting chances to do some throw breaking, get some kills, remove the hazard control. Um, we'll trade rocks. Like have rocks set up, and we'll get rocks pretty soon after. Um, Playing a pretty basic game, like just pretty simple stuff from Katut.
Yeah, it's very much so like kind of reminds me of the Kepi game where it was just sort of like tlenit attacking Katut constantly, and then um, Katut's just sort of tanking and then
You
dealing
mean
back the
Kepi?
hits.
Kepi attacking Katut
Yeah,
constantly. Yeah. We also
yeah,
see its eject pack main trick. Just that's where the shout. Toxic eject pack. I don't rate, and I guess that means it's Scarf on Pheasant too with the Drift Blim removals. Like that works on a technical
it can't be
sense.
sure. Surely it's not Scarf and Pheasant. Surely not, because then he has 2 week to rock things.
Well, it's Boots Defog Drift Blim and it's Boots Rhyme. It turns out it was
It's
Boots
not Boots
Rhyme.
Rhyme.
Yes, it was.
It wasn't Boots Rhyme. I saw it take rock damage. I swear to God, I did.
Hang on.
Throw comes in. Yeah, Rhymes takes fucking rocks. 10-26.
Oh, Rhyme does take rocks. Okay, so yeah, it's the 2 rock weeks plus just Drift Blim as defogger. I would have to assume it's Scarf on Pheasant though, because otherwise your team, you've got Fast Mon Manectric, no priority, and relatively frail. I don't see how it's not Scarf on Pheasant. Like if that's not
Yeah,
Scarf on Pheasant, I would also Lilligant the fuck out of this. Just weaken one of the flying types.
yeah, not difficult.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't feel the cohesion here. And when Katut basically runs up with bulky but still offensive bulk up 3 attacks throw instead of like your Spadef stuff, that's pretty much the only breaker he needed here. Again, early Drift Boom full para helped. Not the biggest deal. Not the biggest deal. Was the Drift Boom
Yeah,
also itemless? Hold up. Was this Drift Boom fucking itemless? It was itemless Drift Bloom too. It's got to be Boots on Pheasant. There's no way. Because there's
yeah.
no way
I
you're
think
running Scarf on Pheasant, itemless Blimp,
three rocks week ones and
and whatever the rhyme
Blimp.
ended up being, which it
Yeah.
wasn't. It wasn't Specs, and it
It's just
wasn't.
confusing because if you're not Specs, you have to be Boots. If
It's
you're not
not Specs
Specs,
or Boots. I swear, Specs can't do that role versus other Mister Rhymes.
That's crazy.
Unless it's timid specs versus max spdef Mr. Rhyme. Let me calc that. Because it did, okay, the Shadow Ball did 46. Rhyme, PU Choice specs, timid versus Rhyme, PU spdef, 252, 252. 46 can be the minimum possible roll. 46.1. It could be timid.
That's probably it.
It's probably timid specs. That's the only thing that makes
It
sense.
has to be.
Yeah, that's nothing else makes sense. Damn, so that also sucks too. Modest specs would have been so much better here. So much better. Because the first time you get the Shadow Ball and it can't recover, after that, Ice Beam gets a kill every time. So that's kind of unfortunate, that one change.
We are here. We are sort of critical here of tlenit's team, but I do think that the general idea behind eject pack plus eject button stuff plus a specs breaker like Mr. Rhyme, which is generally really hard to switch into, I do like that idea. I do like that. That's how, but I just don't think that the execution is a bit left to be desired.
I like the 2 pivoting items and the Rhyme, but everything else coming together, He also almost pulls a sneak victory with Appleton's final move, recover dual stab, sucker punch. Surprise chip on the Alolan Dugtrio puts him in a place where Unpheasant has a chance to get a decent roll on Dugtrio and then has to crit Katut's 100% Gorgai Super at the end. But still, considering it's Unpheasant with Super Luck, like that was surprising. A surprising way to end. But Katut still, people were like, this is a very close game at the end. I don't know. Like, yeah.
It felt like Katut was just sort of like not really worried, and then it really got really worrying really quickly, like towards the end. But then he never really was any under threat anymore.
Yeah. Pretty much. Anyway, that cools it up for this week. There's also week 5. Vulpix 03 versus False. What are your numbers?
My numbers?
Yeah.
I think False had a good idea last week, and I don't think he'll have the same mistakes. So I'm going to predict False 60 to 40. Because I was also impressed with Vulpix as well. I was definitely impressed with how they did, but they'd have to show me more for me to be.
I don't have a big positive or negative, like positive, not a huge positive for me on Vulpix, just because like that really was just someone else losing at them. So I think they're generally good. I think that's pretty fair. But yeah, I want to see False take this. Ziri versus Katut. This is a fun one. Katut didn't play for the first couple weeks and then immediately went a very strong 2-0. Ziri had a very strong 3-0. Last week was a big ouch. So in terms of like momentum and all that, that's on Katut. And I think Katut's individual victories have arguably been like more dominating than Ziri's.
Yeah.
So that's tough. I give Katut slight odds, but they've both been very good. I don't think Ziri's going to have another off week like that. Definitely the highlight game. Really looking forward to this. This is like your ideal week 5, mid-group stages showdown here. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, this is a finals to be beheld. Essentially, this is like as good as it's going to get. I think in terms of raw playing ability and team building, like this has got it all. To be honest, I'm going to give it 52 to Ziri and 48 to Katut, just because I value Specs' input here a lot, and I feel like Katut will lose to Specs' counter prep.
Yeah, I mean, I value the Specs Ziri building core a lot. Katut has not missed so far. It's not the same way where, like, my initial predictions were based on
why it's 48.
TJ not having the same support and Katut not having the same support that they did in PUPL. TJ's only started to come back, like, with this team now. Katut hasn't missed yet, so. TJ versus Ham. Ham's been pretty good. And ZS teams continue to slap. TJ finally had his, a much better return to form there. I think they're now both 2-2. Pretty sure. I don't actually know who to give outside. This to me is pretty 50-50-ish. TJ's definitely the name to favor. At least within PU. But Ham and ZS support, it's been pretty good.
Yeah, they've worked a nice core between them, Ham and ZS. So this
I'm
definitely
sorry, is it him and
would have been.
Skipcan? Am I? Or no, it was ZS.
Skipcan is definitely on that team. Skipcan is
Skipcan is
definitely on that
also on
team.
the
But
team. He's been doing NU building, but I feel like this last week, this team versus Soulgazer we were talking about, I feel like Skipcan said he built that. So I don't like. The point is just I don't want to give all preps to ZS. Skipcan is also helping there. Um,
okay, fair enough then. Either way, I'm probably just going to give 52 to TJ and 48 to Ham. I think because TJ impressed with his recent build, and um, I think potentially it might have been that the meta is now favoring him more so than it was in the past. So um, TJ was also pretty good towards the end of SM. Um, so he also likes a bit of that balance in terms of his meta. So yeah, maybe I think potentially we can see TJ go on a bit of a run. But yeah, we definitely need to see more of the teams that we've seen this week because that will definitely help his record.
hmm. Tlenit versus Obi. Obi is 4-0 now, and Tlenit still struggling. Um, I don't feel.
Yeah,
I still don't feel like
this is a
any of
hard
Obi's.
matchup.
I still don't feel like any of Obi's wins have been like that crazy dominating. There was the big respect is in like you got all these wins, not any the individual wins. Like damn, you really got it. Um, but when Tlenit's struggling this hard, I still like I have to favor Obi here. He's
Yeah.
consistently
Um,
been decent and strong enough to win. Not like you knocked it out of the park the way Katut's last two wins have been or whatever, but like pretty strong. Um,
yeah,
I hope
I'd
that
say.
explains how I feel.
Yeah, I think you're basically. I think you've pretty much nailed it on. Like, um, Tlenit has been struggling, and I think as the tier has developed, where it was like the Savali meta, for example, up until now, Tlenit has progressively declined just a little bit, like um, a little bit going downwards. But Obi has generally performed extremely well, and I feel like Tlenit's worst matchup is versus people who don't play PU. I feel like he has everybody in PU sort of figured out to some extent, but as soon as you put a name like Obi or like Soul Gazer or just random people that play PU but don't really play PU, like aren't a mainer, he tends to struggle a bit more. So I'd probably give it to Obi. Like I don't want to say Tlenit has no chance, but I think probably Obi is like 60, Tlenit 40. I don't know if that's fair because I feel like Tlenit should have better odds than that.
I would have to take your word for it. I don't remember Tlenit's other like non-mainer matchups or whatever, but that sounds fairly reasonable, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
The final one is Piff. Pokemon is Fun versus Kepi. This one's pretty awkward because Soulgazer is the one who's subbing out for Piff. Soulgazer and Kepi have had the worst records so far and been the most like struggling with this meta. Actually, I think Tlenit's tied with them, but I think they've been worse than Tlenit overall, unfortunately. Um, I don't know. It's honestly, I can say it's late Wednesday. I've done like no support for PU for Piff's PU at all. I don't know what's going on with that. I'm just fucking pretty useless. If I ever have downtime, I'm so tired I don't want to spend it building, just like doing Among Us or whatever. So
Ah,
I hope he gets it together, or maybe I'll just step up and build something for them. Yeah,
yeah, Piff, Piff,
that's our internal problem.
yeah, Piff,
I don't know who to favor here.
yeah, Piff's. I can answer that question for you, and I will do later. But Piff, I feel like Piff can
I know you
build
can.
quite well in PU. Piff can
I know he can. I
definitely.
just haven't seen him build at all. I haven't seen him build for this week specifically. I mean, so I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, Kepi's the best player on earth, so he's winning 100-0.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay,
Yeah.
real brief, super fast slam recap. There was only a single game of slam this week because Santu 3 Thank you for coughing, Jad. God damn it.
Oh my god. Sorry.
Santu 3-0'd Soul Wind before they ever even got to PU. But we did get Pink Dragon Tamer versus Confide. This was game 3 of their set. Pink Dragon Tamer was already up 2-0 and looking pretty strong. He's got an interesting looking team. I assume some mainer just passed it to him. I don't think he builds, but I know he knows like a lot of people who build and all that. So fun looking team. It's got like a Masharna and some spikes or T spikes, which I just generally like. Confide has a pretty standard looking team. It's very, very similar to the one that Gatot brought this week of Snake, in fact, except it has a Lilligant over the Alolan Dugtrio and a Dusknoir over the Gorgeist. Other than that, the mons are the same. So, like, it's kind of basic stuff. And it actually has nicknames, I guess. I guess that's a difference. PDT very early basically sacks Roselia to Confide's throw just to get a single spike, and then proceeds to go Hitmonchan, close combat the throw, eject pack into Masharna, take the storm throw, get switched out with eject button to go Boltund, which then choice bands Psychic Fangs to kill Confide's offensive bulk up throw. That was funny. That turn is basically just worth talking about on its own. And that's big. That throw could have done a lot of damage. Also, interestingly, showed Earthquake instead of the Poison Jab Katut opted for. Confide then makes a very odd choice to basically trade his Stunfisk to kill Pink Dragon Tamer's Hitmonchan. Like, Toxics and Rocky helmets it to death as it's just getting Ice Punch, and they double down on the same turn. You kind of wanted that Stunfisk. Pink Dragon Tamer still got an unrevealed Silvally and a Boltund left. Silvally Rock would just fuck him up at this point. Silvally Ice a bit less so. So that fortunately works out for him until it crits the Mr. Rhyme with Flamethrower. That's kind of big. Definitely might have just won the game for Pink Dragon Tamer right there. Still not out of it, so this is one of those cases where the hacks didn't necessarily completely take it, but definitely fucked up the game a little bit. And at the end of the game, Confide tries to Quiver Dance on Pink Dragon Tamer's Alolan Dugtrio. So takes an Ironhead, goes for Quiver, and then just dies because Dugtrio Ironheads again because it's a Scarfalo and Dugtrio get bopped. That's a set that's shown up multiple times in Slam and just surprised Lilligant the exact same way because people are over prepping for Lilligant. That's how it be. So Lilligant does absolutely nothing. And then Pink Dragon Tamer almost chokes, could have left his Dugtrio in, Ironheaded this Confide Scarf on Pheasant, died, Tangling Haired it, and then Boltund outspeeds it and wins. Instead, he forgets about Tangling Hair, sacks Boltund, goes to Masharna, sacks it to get the recoil, and at that point, if Unpheasant had managed to kill the Masharna, which was a roll, plus the crit odds, and then managed to either dodge a Stone Edge or not get flinched by Ironhead, Confide still could have won this game. But Masharna lives, gets the Psychic, and then Dugtrio is going to clean it up. Interesting game overall. Fun eject pack, eject button sequence. I rate this as enjoyable out of interesting. All right.
Cool.
Gimmick corner?
Well, depends if you have some gimmicks.
I've got nothing. I really have not done a single thing in PU. Basically just waiting for the tier shift. It's been a really stupid week and I felt sick and all that. So I hope you have anything. Oh no, I actually did.
Yeah.
I did have one thing from like last week. I was playing with Itemless Thief Morpeko. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It can steal lefties from Stunfisk and Eviolate from Tangela. It's not really like notable, like, oh, that fucks people up, but it's fun.
Yeah, sure. What do you think? Oh, what do you think? What do you think I'm going to say is my? It's definitely not that.
It's going to be an obscure setup move, like a growth or a workup or something like that. That's my guess.
Right. Okay. So, have you ever had? Have you ever used like a Phalanx before?
I have used Phalanx. In fact, I helped make the Soul Gazer team this week that had a Phalanx.
Yeah. Hitmonchan, Phalanx. These Pokemon tend to struggle versus Ghosts, Psychics. Generally speaking, like really bulky things like that.
We've talked up Galarian Farfetch'd enough, if that's what you're going for.
Yeah. Well, you see, Galarian Farfetch'd is a good one, but it's not as good as this one because this one is Choice Specs Zorua. And when you pair it with something such as Phalanx, and you disguise the Phalanx as the Zorua, you can night daze the shit out of any Mishana or Gorgeist that tries to switch in. Or you can just bring Phalanx, predict them to not bring in their Mishana or Gorgeist to be scared, and then just click close combat and kill everything anyway.
Okay. I mean, yeah, that's the general idea of illusion. And 65 speed, 80 special attack. I've heard worse. Problem is, you have
that's 229 speed.
Yeah, that's really not the worst. My only concern is unlike Zoroark, I'm pretty sure Zoroark gets psychic and this doesn't, and that sucks. In fact, it's only covered.
Extra sensory.
Oh, it does have extra sensory. Okay, because I was gonna say without that, like you literally only have dark moves in Grass Knot. That sucks. Because then like.
And Burning Jealousy.
Oh, you're right. Burning Jealousy. Okay, I didn't look at the tutor moves here. That's why. Okay, yeah, Burning Jealousy, Skitter Smack. Hell yeah, let's go Skitter Smack. Yeah, okay, so that's a little better. And you got Memento. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good one. I mean, imagine you play this game, right? Picture this in your head, right? Imagine you have the Zorua, right? And you don't bring in the Zorua, you bring in your actual Phalanx, but the person thinks it's Zorua, so you kill the thing with close combat.
Yeah, I think everyone knows how this is supposed to work. You don't have to explain how illusion mind games work.
But then illusion then kills on the second time. It kills the Mishana, and then you bring in Phalanx again, and you click. What's it called? You click no retreat, and then you outspeed everything, and you win. Imagine.
That would be nice.
That would be crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine the Smogtors chat if that happened. Incredible.
I mean, imagine Smogtors just seeing Zorua team preview. We already get enough. We already get enough like just hatred for being in the tier, just spewed into the chat.
Chat.
Anyone brings like a Zorua or a Grovyle or something, and people are gonna just fucking toxic ass.
Yep.
Like,
yeah, dude.
Like that sounds like it'd be great. But my overall worry for the tier is like, oh god, getting some hate tonight.
Yeah, I'm thinking about. I generally agree with the idea that you can speak things into existence, and Zorua is definitely something that I can imagine people speaking into existence, just with the entire 50/50s and such, with the Smogtors chat going crazy. I can just imagine it. So I hope someone brings it just for the memes, because it would be great.
Someone just commented on the last Untier talk, like literally seconds ago. 810, the term you're looking for is tempting fate. I don't even remember what we were talking about, but sure. Thank you. I'm not going to check what I was confused about, but sure, tempting fate. That's going to be it for this episode. Next week, oh boy, tier shift. Plus Snake.
Oh,
plus
great.
Whatever else there. It's going to be, oh man, tomorrow is both a tier shift and a new Smash DLC. And I'm fucking sick and have classes. I don't know what I'm gonna do, dude.
Wait, what time does the shift actually happen?
Is normally around the like 10 to 12-ish for me. Like
AM or PM?
AM, like 11 to 1 EST-ish, I think. And then Smash is at like 10 AM EST.
Okay, I might be around then, so I can talk to whoever's in the Discord.
Good for you.
Drops.
Yep, we can talk. We will talk. All right, thanks for listening, guys. And next week we'll be back, presumably.